The first pilot climbed into the cockpit, completed every pre-flight check, stared at the maintenance log for several silent seconds, and then calmly shut the aircraft down. One after another, every pilot scheduled that day did exactly the same thing. None of them argued. None of them made a dramatic speech. They simply refused to fly a jet that had been rebuilt by a man whose work had been accepted but whose payment had been stolen. By noon, one of the country's most successful CEOs stood on the sunlit airport ramp watching her multi-million-dollar aircraft remain perfectly still, while the truth she had buried began to spread faster than any airplane ever could. If you believe kindness, forgiveness, hope, and second chances can change lives, please take a moment to like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs encouragement today, and subscribe to our channel to become part of our growing family that believes compassion still matters. Graham Mercer had never imagined his greatest battle would begin after doing everything right. Every sunrise found him awake before dawn, preparing breakfast for his 8-year-old daughter, Eliza, before driving her to school with an old pickup truck that rattled more than it purred. Since losing his wife to a sudden illness 4 years earlier, every decision he made revolved around keeping his promise that their daughter would grow up feeling loved instead of abandoned by grief. He worked longer hours than anyone at the regional aircraft restoration facility, yet somehow always found enough energy to attend school concerts, help with homework, and remind Eliza that even difficult seasons eventually gave way to brighter days. His hands carried scars earned from years of repairing damaged aircraft, but those scars had become symbols of determination rather than hardship. Around the hangar, mechanics often joked that Graham could hear problems inside an airplane before the diagnostic computers could identify them. He never bragged about his talent because he believed good work spoke loudly enough without needing applause. Several hundred miles away, Celeste Whitmore had built one of the largest private logistics companies in North America. Newspapers celebrated her relentless discipline and astonishing business instincts, but almost nobody knew how deeply she feared failure. Every success had been purchased through impossible schedules, painful sacrifices, and years spent believing trust was a weakness. She expected perfection from everyone around her because she demanded even more from herself. When one of her executive jets suffered catastrophic structural damage after an emergency runway excursion, she insisted the aircraft be restored instead of replaced. The project became urgent because several major contracts depended upon that airplane returning to service before the end of the quarter. Every engineering consultant recommended Graham's restoration team. Although Celeste never met him personally, she signed the approval without much thought, seeing only another contractor hired to complete an expensive assignment. The damage looked hopeless when the aircraft first entered the enormous maintenance hangar flooded with bright afternoon sunlight. Twisted aluminum panels, fractured support structures, damaged hydraulic systems, and compromised fuel lines transformed the elegant jet into something resembling forgotten scrap metal. Even experienced inspectors doubted whether rebuilding it made financial sense. Graham quietly studied every damaged section for hours before touching a single tool. He believed rushing repairs on an aircraft was an invitation to disaster. Every bolt mattered because every passenger mattered. His team worked patiently for weeks, replacing damaged structures, reinforcing weakened sections, recalibrating complex flight systems, and performing repeated safety inspections until the aircraft met standards that exceeded factory specifications. Graham often stayed long after everyone else left, polishing tiny imperfections nobody else would ever notice. His daughter sometimes visited after school, sitting quietly with coloring books while watching her father treat every airplane as though families depended upon his careful hands. In truth, they often did. When the restoration was completed, independent inspectors praised the quality of the work with unusual enthusiasm. Several even commented that the rebuilt aircraft demonstrated craftsmanship becoming increasingly rare within the industry. Graham felt proud, not because of recognition, but because he knew another crew of travelers would fly safely because someone had refused to cut corners. The company submitted its invoice according to the signed contract. The payment represented nearly 6 months of operating revenue for the restoration facility, enough to provide bonuses to hardworking employees and finally replace aging equipment that constantly broke down. Then everything changed. During a routine executive review, Celeste's finance department questioned several restoration expenses. A vice president eager to reduce quarterly costs convinced her the contractor had overcharged. Without requesting an independent review or speaking with Graham, Celeste authorized withholding the final payment until further notice. To her, it looked like another aggressive business decision. To Graham, it meant payroll suddenly became uncertain. Suppliers demanded payment. Bills accumulated. Loyal employees accepted delayed wages because they believed in him, but he saw the worry hidden behind every encouraging smile. At home, Eliza quietly noticed unopened envelopes gathering on the kitchen table. She never complained, even when favorite weekend activities disappeared because money had become painfully tight. Graham refused to lower himself by launching angry public attacks. Instead, he gathered every engineering record, every inspection certificate, every signed approval, and respectfully requested a meeting. His letters remained unanswered. Phone calls were redirected. Weeks became months. Friends urged him to hire aggressive attorneys or speak to the media, but Graham believed dignity mattered even during injustice. He continued working smaller repair jobs just to keep the facility alive, though every unpaid day pushed the business closer toward collapse. What Celeste failed to understand was that aviation operated on something stronger than contracts. It operated on trust. Pilots trusted mechanics with their lives. Mechanics trusted engineers. Engineers trusted inspectors. Everyone depended upon integrity because gravity never accepted excuses. Word slowly spread through maintenance crews that Graham's completed restoration had been officially accepted, certified, and placed back into executive service while payment remained intentionally withheld. Nobody questioned the quality of his work. They questioned the fairness shown toward the man who had completed it. The first scheduled captain examined the maintenance documentation, recognized Graham's signature, and quietly requested reassignment. He explained that although the aircraft was technically airworthy, he refused to participate in normal operations while the mechanic responsible for ensuring its safety had been treated dishonorably. Another captain reached the same conclusion. Then another. Soon experienced pilots across the company shared identical concerns. If leadership could ignore fairness toward someone whose craftsmanship protected lives, what else might eventually be sacrificed for financial convenience? By midday, every scheduled flight involving the restored jet had been cancelled. News of the unusual protest spread rapidly throughout the aviation community. It was not a strike. It was not organized by any union. It was simply experienced professionals making individual decisions based upon shared principles. Reporters became fascinated by the story because it centered not upon mechanical failure but moral failure. Cameras arrived outside the airport under brilliant afternoon skies while aviation experts explained that confidence inside the industry depended upon respect between every person responsible for flight safety. Celeste stood beside her motionless aircraft surrounded by frustrated executives whose schedules were collapsing. Contracts worth millions faced delays. Investors demanded explanations. Yet none of those pressures disturbed her as deeply as reading interview after interview praising Graham's integrity instead of criticizing her contractor. Every person who had worked beside him described the same qualities. Patient. Honest. Meticulous. Humble. Compassionate. One retired inspector admitted he would gladly place his own grandchildren aboard any aircraft Graham repaired because he trusted the man's character as much as his technical ability. For the first time in years, Celeste wondered whether relentless efficiency had quietly replaced simple decency. Curiosity led her to visit Graham's facility personally during a bright afternoon. She expected confrontation. Instead she found aging equipment, hardworking employees encouraging one another despite obvious financial strain, and Graham calmly helping an apprentice understand a complicated structural repair without a trace of bitterness. Nearby, Eliza sat reading while waiting for her father to finish work, occasionally smiling whenever he looked her way. The little girl unknowingly transformed everything. She proudly showed Celeste a school drawing featuring herself and her father standing beside an airplane beneath a giant sun. Across the top she had carefully written that her father fixed wings so families could always come home safely. Those simple words pierced every wall Celeste had built around her heart. she realized she had viewed invoices instead of people, expenses instead of sacrifices, numbers instead of families. Later that afternoon she requested every document related to the disputed payment. Independent auditors reviewed the restoration from beginning to end. Their conclusion arrived quickly and without ambiguity. Graham's invoice had been entirely justified. In fact, his team had completed additional safety improvements without billing for several labor hours simply because they believed the aircraft deserved the highest possible standard. Embarrassment settled heavily upon Celeste. She could have quietly transferred the money and hoped the controversy faded. Instead, she recognized that genuine accountability required more than correcting paperwork. The following morning, beneath another clear daytime sky, she gathered employees, pilots, mechanics, executives, and reporters outside the airport maintenance center. Graham arrived expecting another technical inspection, unaware that hundreds of people had assembled. Celeste walked toward him carrying a single envelope. Inside rested the full payment, interest covering every delayed month, additional compensation recognizing uncompensated labor, and a long-term maintenance partnership guaranteeing stable work for Graham's facility. Yet before handing it over, she did something nobody expected. She publicly accepted responsibility. She admitted that pride had prevented her from questioning assumptions. She confessed that leadership without humility eventually harms innocent people. She thanked the pilots whose refusal to fly had forced her to confront uncomfortable truths before they permanently damaged both her company and her character. Silence filled the air until Graham accepted the envelope. Many expected anger, many expected revenge. Instead, Graham simply said that airplanes were repaired one careful piece at a time, and sometimes broken trust had to be repaired the very same way. He explained that forgiveness never erased accountability, but accountability made forgiveness meaningful. He hoped nobody standing there would waste the painful lesson because kindness became strongest when practiced after mistakes rather than before them. The applause that followed echoed across the airport. In the months that followed, Graham's restoration facility expanded without sacrificing its values. New apprentices learned not only advanced aviation skills but also the importance of honesty, patience, and respect. Eliza watched her father receive industry awards she believed he deserved long before anyone else noticed. She never forgot the difficult months because they taught her that integrity sometimes walks through long seasons before justice finally catches up. Celeste transformed her own leadership as well. She introduced independent contractor review systems, employee listening councils, and ethical oversight policies ensuring financial decisions could never again ignore human consequences. Her executives noticed that the company became stronger, not weaker, when compassion stood beside discipline. Pilots returned confidently to the restored aircraft, knowing respect had finally been rebuilt alongside every aluminum panel and hydraulic line. Years later, people remembered the remarkable jet not because it had survived terrible damage, but because it reminded an entire industry that the strongest thing holding an airplane together was never metal alone. It was trust earned through character, protected by courage, and restored through humility. Before we reach the end of this journey, please leave a meaningful comment sharing what touched you most. Do you believe integrity is worth defending even when it comes at a personal cost, or has someone in your life inspired you by choosing forgiveness instead of revenge? If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. May we all remember that success built without compassion eventually becomes empty, but even the deepest mistakes can become the beginning of redemption when people choose honesty, humility, forgiveness, and the courage to make things right.